Hi everyone. This is a edited version of how my webinar with the wonderful Katy Baker started because I forgot to set up auto record, and then I forgot to hit record as Katy and I got started on our conversation. So this is a revised version of how the original webinar got started. Hang on here, I'm going to share my screen. So our webinar topic is The Price is Right. And the special guest is Katy Baker. I'm going to tell you a bit more about her in a few minutes. And this is really part of the free webinars I've been doing on strengthening your sales and revenue. So important. And this particular topic, The Price is Right, totally outside my area of expertise. So Katy's actually going to be our presenter for the majority of this webinar. However, to start us off, I wanted to tell you a story. And the story will illustrate why I was so excited when Katy offered to do this webinar for us. I am going to say 8, maybe 10 years ago, I was asked to do a 1-hour webinar to a small team of individuals at a major bank in Canada. They were based in British Columbia, and I am in Halifax. So the request was that I go to their head office in downtown Halifax to create this webinar because they had the latest technology. And by that, I mean, when I stood in their boardroom and the equipment was turned on, the camera followed me as I walked around, and I could feel like I was right at the front of their boardroom table in British Columbia. So this was their employee benefits team. And so the things to know are that, of course, I got dressed up and then probably took half an hour to get to the location of the office, park the car, pay for parking, and walk to the office. And of course, I got there early to learn, experience the technology. And then I gave the 1-hour webinar. And then, of course, I drove back to my office. And during the course of this webinar, which was primarily about outbound calls, but at one point, one of the senior VPs said to me, well, you know, this is what we are currently saying on a lot of our calls. Why are they not working? So I listened to what he was saying, and because that's my job, I could hear very quickly why they weren't getting engagement with that particular opening, and also why people weren't returning their calls. So I very quickly, again, my skill set, very quickly revised that so that it would create engagement quickly, both in terms of a voicemail message and when they connected with someone on the phone. And after I did that, he said, oh, Regine, that's amazing. Thanks so much. You know, this is billions of dollars of business for us. Oh. So the point of the story is, he said that to me, and I was like, I'm driving home, I'm thinking about that. And I'm realizing that for my talent, my skill, is to help open doors. And according to him, I opened a door worth billions of dollars for them. And I charged them $125 for that hour of my time. So definitely that afternoon, I raised my rates. But the idea is that I was pricing from the wrong point of view right from the beginning. I was pricing based on the fact that, I'm born in Northern Ontario and don't, my first jobs were in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And to me, $125 an hour was a lot of money, based on the fact that probably for my first job, I got paid $3.50 an hour or something like that. So $2.50, I think, an hour for waitressing plus tips. But that's the wrong perspective in terms of how you price something. You want to consider value, and you want to consider a lot of other things, which is what our guest, Katy Baker, is going to share with us. So Katy Baker, besides being just effervescent and energetic and wonderful, is a CPA, CMA, and holds a certified international trade professional designation. So she works with clients, helping them create their profitable pricing framework. And she's going to give you a lot of details on how to do this for yourself. She's also going to be offering you 30-minute free discovery calls. So this framework also aligns with optimum tax savings, and it stems from her 25 years of project management plus her own work as an entrepreneur. So her passion is eliminating doubt and building confidence in clients, because they have this financial literacy about their pricing and about their business. And on top of that, Katy is an experienced trade professional. She's going to tell you a little bit about that, advising clients on their next step growth decisions into new markets, both nationally and internationally. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Katy Baker.
You had an intro about me, but to who I work with startups right up to mature entrepreneurs, and to build and instill financial literacy, to ensure profit by the incorporation of all costs of doing business, commonly referred to as overhead, into a client's pricing profile. So we can start this work digging in right away with just 1 month's expenses. More months worth is optimal, but we can start with just 1 month. So to build financial literacy, we begin with putting a really close lens on your operating expenses, things such as office, admin support, vehicle, insurance, utilities, accounting, legal fees, et cetera, on marketing expenses, those expenses you incur to help expand your business, including professional development that helps continue to grow your expertise and client base. And all those expenses that are incurred, whether you produce one item or you see one client per year, or you make and see many, many more. As we work our way through, we do take into account things like charitable giving, time off, retirement contributions, repayment of investors, because we add in a profit margin. So the overall goal is to establish an equitable and transparent pricing profile. Along the way, 100%, we're going to identify savings, because through this very close inspection of all your expenses, we are more than likely to spot 1 or 2 oversights. So some quick wins right from the start. The work, by no coincidence, will align your business and financial base with the reward of becoming empowered. So another goal, to direct your bookkeeper and or accountant and not depend on them. So I like to repeat that, because this is we are going to get to an end goal of defining your pricing profile, but along the way, we are going to learn so much about everything you spend money on that you're going to become empowered again to direct your bookkeeper and or accountant and not depend on them. So time for the first poll. And this is about the status of your present bookkeeping.
Okay.
You
So
ready
I'm
to launch
launching
this?
that now.
Okay.
So do you have a bookkeeper you see monthly, an accountant you take your books to annually, an informal relationship with an external service provider, or you do the books yourself. Linda's saying she had lunch with her bookkeeper today, who's also my bookkeeper, by the way.
Perfect. Okay, good.
So I'm going to end the poll at the 1 minute
So
mark.
an even,
And we'll share that with everybody.
okay.
There we
perfect.
go. Everybody can see them now.
Pretty much half, like 33%, like have a bookkeeper, do the books myself. So there's some empowering already there. Seeing an accountant annually, and informal relationship. Okay, good. So I do want to say that 100% I recommend employing a third eye on the financials. And I think it is best if you do pay them. Sometimes people have relatives who do them, but I always think paid relationships makes it more business-like. But you need to have both of your eyes wide open, because understanding, as in life, as humans, we make mistakes, and bookkeepers and accountants make mistakes all the time. And so this work also empowers clients to keep ahead of making or having unnecessary financial accounting mistakes to the detriment of their business. So why create a pricing profile? Firstly, to ensure your hard work pays off, and lots of other good reasons I just mentioned in the last slide. But let's focus for a minute on many of the reasons that I've heard entrepreneurs confess to me. Reasons around their financial avoidance and their shame. And so it's important, because avoiding our financial situation can lead to thoughts of shame, embarrassment, but it will also lead to a loss of profitability, because you can't profit from what you don't quantify. And that will then cause stressful financial and/or emotional situations, which keep people stuck in bad personal or professional relationships, can cause sleeplessness and overall bad personal outlook. And it can lead to the perpetuation perpetuation of the imposter syndrome, a whole topic in of itself, because basically the imposter syndrome is a lack of confidence that ambushes and immobilizes our productivity. Very annoying, but also very common. And finally, if all that wasn't enough, financial anxieties can lead to a lack of clear business purpose. So this pricing work was inspired by entrepreneurs and created by me to develop a mindset of strength and knowledge toward nurturing confidence in financial literacy and defining or redefining your business's financial purpose, and ridding entrepreneurs of avoidance and shame.
So Linda's added or requoted, you can't profit from what you don't quantify.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is there a connection that we should acknowledge between our personal relationship with money in our lives, like what we were taught about money or not taught about money as children? You know, we never talk about money at the dinner table kind of scenario, and what we bring to owning a business.
It's very true. I think a lot of entrepreneurs begin because they have the passion for what they do, and not necessarily about the money. If it was all about the money, they might have kind of quantified or run a scenario and decided, that's not going to make the type of money I want. So I think most entrepreneurs start with a passion, and it's not always about their financial know-how, so to speak. That said, what this work intends to do is really just take away the emotion. Let's just look at it. They're just numbers. And let's just look at them as they sit there on the page, and organize them in a way that helps me land on a price that I know for certain is a fair price to charge. So another kind of level set is, what is your business's present pricing strategy? So this is time for the second poll. How did you calculate your present pricing?
Did you apply accounting principles to your current pricing? Research and use industry standards? Someone told you what price to charge? I just landed on a price.
So I see so far lots of research and use of industry standards. That's good.
And Amy's adding, I wish I could choose more than one. It's been a journey. Absolutely. I can relate to that. Linda Daly's saying the same thing.
Yeah, and sometimes the journey, you can, again, that sort of being ambushed by doubt. You know, this is something I researched and understood industry, but is this the right price for me?
So when Shauna's adding that too, that it's been a journey for her, and I can say the same thing for sure. So there I've shared the results, and Vicky Me is adding, yes, I have a good idea of industry standards. So it's actually a combination of all four.
Okay. Yes, it can be. So let's then, without, let's consider some possibilities, what you said, and maybe things you haven't said. And starting as a consultant, have you been determining your price by charging 2 or 3 times an hourly wage rate? Maybe you once had. You calculated per project. So someone proposed a project and you sat down and you gave them a price based on that project. Or you base the price on a perceived performance or financial outcome. So to Mary Jane's story, had she known that RBC, this project was worth trillions of dollars, then she could have priced a lot higher. That's not always the case though. But there are pricing scenarios where you price it, you get a percentage of how much the dial has turned revenue-wise with your work with that client. And if you're a producer manufacturer, have you been pricing based on labor and materials alone, or doubling for wholesale and then doubling again for retail, or simply pricing like the competition does? What I want to know most from you all is, are you sure? Are you 100%? Are you 110% sure you factored in all of the expenses that go into being an entrepreneur? And so this is really the biggest part of the work I do, because so far I really haven't met an entrepreneur that hasn't done that. That has done that. Okay.
Most entrepreneurs don't take into consideration all of their expenses when they're creating their pricing.
I think it's true. And I think as we go through this here very shortly, you're going to see, because I'm going to give a live example, you're going to see how the incorporation of all prices is I'm not going to say easily done, but once we tabulate your real expense data, then you'll see how that goes. So I'm going to begin with consultants. So third poll, and we are going to, I think this is our last poll, right? The third poll is determine how many on this webinar are consultants and how many are makers or producers, or a hybrid of both. So I give that opportunity as well. When I say service or product, I am also meaning cons consultant and product, consultancy and products.
Right. So if you had an online course, online courses you're selling, plus,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Or you are maybe, I have a daughter who's a potter, and let's say she went into teaching. So there's an aspect of her business might be, consulting or coaching or teaching, and then the aspect of what she's producing.
Okay, great. So I'll leave the poll up there another few seconds. Um, okay, we're at a minute, so I'm gonna stop and end the poll and share it. And we're evenly split here, except we don't have any people that are
Okay.
only makers,
Makers and
producers.
producers. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so we're going to start with the consultants, but those who have a production aspect to your business, this all applies to you as well. So the goal here is to establish an hourly base client facing rate. So I'm just going to repeat that again. You can write it down: an hourly base client facing rate that takes into account not just your valuable talented time, but all of your costs of being in a business and of growing your business. As I said earlier, we start with determining your total overhead from your real life data. The first calculations are around bricks and mortar expenses, such as percentage use of home or office and vehicle, to account for all of your operating expenses, as I mentioned earlier, as well as the consideration of depreciable percentage of capital costs and intangible assets. So you might have intellectual property or goodwill. And then to all of your marketing and development expenses, all costs that are incurred regardless of 1 or 100. So you open your doors, 1 client walks in this year, 100 client walks in, you're going to incur these expenses regardless. And we want to be sure to take into consideration vacation, charitable donations, retirement, savings. And we do all this as we align for optimum tax savings. I know we got a lot of stuff in the pot right now. This is also very, very key because, okay, let's just skip ahead. Best case scenario, you gross an annual salary, your goal, 60,000 this year, 80,000, 100,000. So you're not an employee, no one's taking tax deduction. Whatever the amount, and depending on your tax bracket, you face a tax bill. For instance, round figures, 60,000, round figures. In Nova Scotia, that's a $17,000 tax bill. 80,000, $24,000 tax bill. 100,000, 32,000 in tax. Now I know you have individual exemption and you have individual situations that allow for different tax deductions. But in terms of your business, you see where I'm sort of trending. It's a little chunk of change. So in order that your eyes are wide open every day you're in business, this work also sheds a light on what CRA asks you to report on. And that added knowledge will help you plan better because, as the saying goes, you should pay yourself first. And as we tabulate overhead, we want to be aware of things to align your expenses, to reward yourself, build your client base, grow your business with more financial intention.
So Katie, 2 things, I'm going to interrupt you. So first of all, Shauna put in a comment. So Shauna's the one that's communicated with us by email about her business. And when she looked at that poll that we created, she didn't know exactly where to place herself there. So I just want to share that with you. And then Vicky Nee is asking, if you're incorporated, not a sole proprietorship, does that not lower your tax rate?
Okay, so I don't want to slide, because we could really slide into a tax rate and tax. Yes, incorporation does. There's a 6 of one, half a dozen of another kind of scenario, depending on, again, your situation and how you realize, how you pay yourself incorporated or if not. I guess the point I was really wanting to get to in terms of pricing and putting a magnifying glass on our expenses is in terms of keeping in mind what CRA will allow deductions on, a few quick examples of pay yourself first is health insurance is a tax deduction. So reward yourself with a good plan, like you're deciding on a plan. Will I go with a cheap $75 a month and that gives me this, or will I spend $250 and it gives me so much more? You know, it's a tax deduction. So, you know, get your massages, go make sure you're getting all your, you know, this is sort of what I'm getting at when you're looking at expenses. And then marketing events. So a big part of being a consultant is recognizing, valuing your clientele, saying thank you to existing clients, asking them to bring you more clients, maybe making a splash or having an annual event. And with proper planning, you can host an event that is also, you know, has tax deduction in it. So that was what that was about. So let's go to products. I know we don't have too many producers, but I did, as a takeaway, there are some key things if you are a maker. Very identical to much of the work we do for consultants in terms of determining that overhead. Key distinctions, determining the breakdown on all of the direct costs per unit. So materials, how much is used per product, labor, how much time is spent per product, and per unit overhead, very key. So when we talk about the base client facing rate for consultants, for makers, we're determining the base overhead per product rate. And we will solve for the business's break even, ensuring profitability is part of the plan by building a comprehensive cost template per product. And I have some really wonderful industry developed templates that provide really, you know, great insight and ensures profit. And in fact, very easy to use. So it will illustrate, those templates will illustrate how to be profitable immediately upon determining the specific cost inputs. Along the way, we look at scaling your business production for growth. So we're going to get to the dessert portion of this soon, but I just want to do a little recap. To this point, we've covered a fair number of areas and categories around determining your business pricing. And again, it's very dependent on your specific situation. The goal is determining that base overhead rate by calculating all of the direct inputs and indirect costs, those incurred regardless, one client, 100 clients. So percentage use of home, percentage use of vehicle, operating costs, marketing and professional development for honing your expertise and continuing growth of your offerings. And finally, we make sure to add a profit margin. So your hard work incorporates a fair, profitable return, and in the event you have shareholders, then you are also able to pay them. I think by now you can see how the journey of getting to that base overhead rate per client or per unit will be very informing, as you become very familiar with all the figures that go into establishing that base client facing overhead rate. So now to the
used to being on mute, sorry. I go to talk and I get reminded. So I'm wondering, and I don't want to do it as a poll, so maybe in chat, for that information that Katy is lining us up to investigate. How easy is that for everybody on the call? Like, when we look at all these things, are you, and feel free anybody to answer this in chat, is it easy for you to get these numbers based on how you're currently doing your bookkeeping or how you're currently saving your costs? So when I think of looking up this information, it's relatively easy for me to gather this information. And I guess that's, yeah, the question. So Heather Fraser is saying yes, she can pull this together fairly easily. I'm saying yes to that too. Jennifer Doherty is saying difficult. And my partner, and I'm assuming your business partner, but maybe your life partner too, Jennifer, don't agree on them. And Karen is saying first 3 are easily doable. And Jennifer's clarifying for me, the partner she's talking about is a business partner. So this slide that Katy has created for us is a template for how, I think, Katy, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to look at how you're doing your bookkeeping so that these costs, why are these costs difficult for you to go back and find, I think, based on how you're doing your bookkeeping.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, this work is like sorting, you know, it's kind of like decluttering all your expenses and sorting them and getting kind of up close and personal with them so we can categorize them and decide how we're going to apply them and incorporate into our pricing. I think if I proceed to our transparent pricing manifesto and I give you this example, we can spend time, and please, again, Mary Jane, monitor the chat and please feel free to contribute into the chat if you have questions as they go. So I think the example will start to kind of like clear out maybe some of the misconceptions or make clear the notion of creating your pricing manifesto. So I'm using this example that I can speak 100% confidently about in order to illustrate the power of this work. And it's my pricing manifesto. So I'm going to set the stage. If I worked in a firm, I would be billed out at an average of $250 an hour as a CPA. And I actually think that might be a little bit low for most big kind of fancy firms, but let's just go with it. So at least 175 of that would be attributed to that firm's overhead. So think about nice downtown offices, full complement of accounting and ancillary staff, their marketing, their client appreciation events, et cetera, et cetera. And then 75 of that would go towards my expertise and salary. So thinking of that, this is where we're going to trend to with our pricing manifesto. Let's park that for a moment for me and let's shift and think about how much time I'm going to spend, because I need a common denominator for all these expenses, and the common denominator is the hourly rate. So how much time am I going to work in my business? And for this example, and through a lot of research, I've concluded that it will be 960 hours per year. And I'll explain the breakdown here in a minute. And the same amount of time will be spent on my business. So 1,920 hours per year, half developing or marketing to grow my client base. I'm an accountant, so I have to further my professional development. I also do export, so I have to further my professional development on trade agreements, trade shows. These all have expenses. And if I don't keep current and if I don't keep engaged, then I'm not going to have expertise that's appealing for clients. And the other half of my time is going to be in front of clients. Broken down, that's approximately, well, it's 40 hours per week for 48 weeks a year. So that gives me 4 weeks vacation. Will I take that? I definitely will, because burnout with entrepreneurs is very real. So you need to take time for yourself. And I highly recommend people take that vacation. It's like that moment you get up from your desk and you go for a 20-minute walk and you come back completely like, I know how to solve this problem. Vacation does that for you too. So it's so important. And just to compare the number of weeks or a number of hours employees work, it's anywhere between 1,800 and 2,000 per year. So 1,920 hours, 4 weeks vacation. I think that's pretty fair. So that's our time commitment. And this is key because remember, we're creating a base client facing hourly rate. For products, it's a bit different, but stay with me because the principles of time management and how you're able to produce profit by allocating overhead apply. So stay with me and know that, in fact, pricing for products is actually a bit easier because of the pricing templates. It makes it very transparent. I think as consultants, we feel like our pricing isn't transparent. And maybe it doesn't bother anybody more than it bothers ourselves, but that's the worst person it bothers, because then we don't negotiate for ourselves and we don't charge fairly. And then we're kind of always behind the 8 ball of, you know, why didn't I charge more? So we're going to start first with calculating what I'm going to call the bricks and mortar hard costs, or the cost of doing business, overhead, your ongoing operating expenses, one client or 100. I'm going to throw the figure out there. Mine is $36,300 per year. Rent, admin support, utilities, insurance, professional fees, car payments, professional designation fees, software licensing. You get the picture. Broken out, it's $3,025 per month. Okay, that's my spend on my bricks and mortar. Now, what about my client base? Planning, research, marketing, promotion, networking, travel, trade shows, conferences, growing and making my business better. $28,000 a year. So now we put the two together and we've got an overhead, a cost of doing business. $36,000 for the bricks and mortar, $28,000 for marketing, time spent, as well as hard costs, is $64,300. One client or 100. Divide that by the numbers you work on your business. Remember, I did 960 in my business, planning, developing, on my business, client facing. That's an hourly overhead rate I can confidently apply of $67 per hour. That's not my hourly rate. That's my overhead. So you know when you go to get your car fixed and they outline an hourly rate, this is sort of where we're going, as well as back to the accounting, the 175 for overhead. My hourly expertise, I've determined at 75 an hour. So I calculated this. I did use what the firm would pay me, but I also was mindful of factoring in my education, my professional development, research, all my accumulated knowledge base, not to mention the network I'm going to connect my clients with. All this constitutes my value proposition. And it's why people hire me, why people will hire you with each and every client. I won't go into that calculation much further, but all to say it wasn't a ballpark figure. So now to recap, 67 is overhead and 75 is my expertise, equals 142 an hour. Now adding on a profit margin, because I need to take vacation. It's important to me to give to charities that are important to me. Retirement, paying off investors, you need a profit margin. So putting 20% on them 142, and I come up with 170 per client facing hour. Completely transparent. Nothing around that number now is nebulous to me. It's based on figures that I have worked through, understood, know to be true. So I'm fully confident in sharing that with the world as my hourly rate. Now,
so I want to share a couple of things with you. This is awesome. I don't know if anybody else is feeling the same way, but this is awesome. And I'll let everybody know that you're going to be getting a copy of Katy's slide deck as well. So first, in terms of those costs we shared earlier, Heather Fraser is sharing that she has a binder and she keeps files in for the various line items that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy is sharing the fact that this is bottom up thinking that to her is not intuitive. It's not where she thought she should start, which I love this. I think more about how much my client can afford.
Oh.
So I think a lot of us think that. And so, Amy, I really appreciate that you shared that.
No, absolutely. I think that's a common sentiment. And let me say, if once you go through this, you're going to sit with it and you're going to be like, well, what the heck?
Exactly. No, I
Well,
love it.
I can't charge that. But you don't have to charge it if you don't want to. You don't have to do
No.
anything you don't want to, but you have to understand that you did go through a process of an expense audit, and then you decided how much time you could possibly work and how much time you would need to develop your business. So you didn't just willy-nilly kind of throw a number into the air.
Yeah, and Zdenka has added great reminder and insightful, not to forget about important costs that we may omit as entrepreneurs. Frida is saying this is the clearest I've ever seen this. Great detail. Thank you. And Linda has said exactly, or me too. Ditto from Karen. And Amy is saying I could go through this and get a higher number and then say, right, there is no one that can afford this. Haha. She's saying, haha. But maybe you want to address it, is if you go through this and you end up with a number you would never feel comfortable charging, then what?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Then what? I mean, again, sit with it, because I think it's important that to grow a strong business, you have to keep your own strength, which means you have to make sure, I have worked, trust me, I work with plenty of entrepreneurs who I said, you didn't have a line of credit, you haven't paid yourself. Oh yes, I took this all out of savings. Everybody came first but her. And I said, oh, I think I misunderstood. I didn't realize that you were running this as a charity. It sounded flippant. It wasn't. Oh, I'm not, she said. I'm not. And I said, but you are. You are. And she said, my husband says the same thing. And so, it's kind of sort of, so you do have to kind of sit with it. I invite you to make the exploration, to go through it, and decide for yourself. But I think it's important that you kind of do this very clear and thorough audit, and then you can make decisions around what you found. So I just wanted to continue with Let's for Fun, multiply that out. I've dedicated to seeing clients for 960 hours. And trust me, that's a busy schedule. That's 20 hours of client facing a week, and then 20 hours of turning around and, networking, marketing, learning, attending things. So it's a busy, busy week. And so my maximum return to me annually is 163,200. Now, trust me, this is my pricing profile. This is not what I have not got there yet. But working in a CPA firm, let's look at what I would have made. So $75 an hour for 1,920 hours, it would have made 144,000. So in many respects, I think, as we know, especially as consultants, being an entrepreneur can be much more profitable if you do your pricing right, as well as you will be able to allocate expenses against your taxes. So a percentage use of car payments, your home office, travel to conferences. None of these are tax deductible as an employee. And finally, you will say, but how can you be sure you will have 960 hours worth of client-facing time? And I'm going to say, because I'm going to work the other half of the week, probably more in the early years, at developing that client base. And when I get it, I will nurture and maintain it, spend time and money doing that as well, all of which I've planned and allocated for.
That's amazing. Say that again. So when you're calculating this, you're calculating the hours you put into the growth of your business.
Yes.
Right? Because all that time that we spend prospecting and building our brand and all of that is calculated in here as well. It's absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to let you know that Shauna has said that she's looking forward to inputting her numbers based on
Well, yes, And I would welcome the time to talk with you, Shauna, because your email was very helpful. And I outlined something for you that I think answers your questions really nicely. And you can get, once you do this work and once you get clarity and once you decide on the price you're going to charge, you can almost park it. And when you revisit and talk to your bookkeeper and your accountant, you can look at the numbers with knowledge and not think, oh wow, is that all I made? Because you have gone through the thorough work of tabulating what it'll be.
Right.
So,
And Heather Fraser's also added that she's really, she can't wait to put my numbers in also. And I feel the same. I think this is so exciting.
good. So, that leads perfectly into, I hope you've been enticed to develop your own profitable pricing profile. I'm not going to go over session by session the work I do, but the deck will be, as Mary Jane said, shared with you, and you can review in your own time. So you've seen my pricing profile, and you might think, oh, sweet, I'll just apply those costs to my work. I feel comfortable. I'm probably incurring very close to the same costs. So I'm really comfortable that I could be paid similarly in the private sector. So it's an easy solve. But I really say no, it's not, because although the destination was the pricing, the journey is really the empowerment. The journey is where you kind of do, as they say, the heavy lifting. It's the training for the marathon. Running the marathon's the reward. It's the training where you build the strength. So where in this work, it's while we go through and you go through all your expenses and give it, a really fine review, that you build then your financial knowledge base. And that helps you possess that sustained confidence around your business and its financial composition. And it will give you that keen insight to know how to direct and not depend on your bookkeeper or accountant, sort of like getting like, oh, and even if it is, oh, you can be like, wait, I need to look through this because I thought it would be quite different. And when you look through it, you will do that with the knowledge of what you're looking for.
Great. And Linda Daly's added that the journey is the empowerment.
The journey is definitely the empowerment. I mean, the sweet spot at the end is landing on a price. You wake up at 3:00 in the morning and you're like, how can I charge $170 an hour? That's like preposterous. Who did I? And then you say, oh, well, I went through the pricing. I went through everything. I put all the costs in, and this is what it came out to be. But I think also financial, your financial paperwork is like the footprints of your business in the sand, and they leave their mark and illustrate an ebb and flow. And if you can't recognize them for what they are, you'll be moving blindly, missing key opportunities in turn, not knowing when to turn down something that doesn't make sense to commit your time and talent to. Equally, than knowing an opportunity you might gladly take up.
Okay.
I work in a project, a social innovation nonprofit project at Ryerson called Magnet, and it's a very interesting project. But one of the aspects of it is we don't charge our partners to use the product, and I think that hurts engagement. It's still past the MVP, minimum viable product stage, but we're still developing it. So we're fair not to charge. But I do think people feel there is value when, I'm not saying price something high just for the sake of it, but if you feel embarrassed, but you understand that is what you bring to the table, then there should be no shame charging a price that feels maybe a bit high. And in turn, maybe you're thinking, wow, this price came out lower than I thought. Then there's creative things you can do. Maybe you want a higher profit margin. Maybe Maybe you want to add a part of your business where you give your time free to nonprofits, but your paying clients kind of help you with that.
So I want to interrupt you there and let you know that Heather Fraser said, I agree, I have been struggling with costing out a fair price. This format brilliant. So great. And we have sort of 8 minutes left. And so Katy has some information she wants to share with you. And then also I'm going to take the screen back, Katy, and share a few last minute things in our
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Okay. So what will be your why? Would you like more profitability? Would you like to become more financially literate and feel empowered? Eliminate some nagging doubt, alignment for tax reporting, and of course, savings and retirement. So my offer for attending this webinar is a 30-minute discovery call for free.
Very generous.
And you'll get the deck, so you get my email, but just email me. Love to hear from you. And I will stop.
And Shauna's added, if you charge too little, underpricing yourself, potential clients wonder what's wrong with you.
Well, that can be the case too. You know, that again, I think that can be a victim of what we're doing as a social enterprise, is that we're not charging. And so people think, you know, the engagement, I don't know if it's worth it. We're not really paying for it anyways.
Well, and I know myself, to add another sort of embarrassing story, I do a lot of work with a consultant in the US. And well, here's a story. He asked me to do some one-on-one coaching with some of his clients. And I did that. And on the first time it happened, the client said, well, I'd like to do more of this. What do you charge? So I told him that I charge, at the time I was charging $185 an hour for one-on-one coaching. And so I said that. And then within minutes after Douglas heard that I had said that, said, Mary Jane, do not share your pricing. I charge $6.25 an hour. Coaching. I was like, oh my God, I would never charge that no matter what. But again, it was that discrepancy. And then what does he think of me? He knows I provide value because we've been working together 5 years, but what does he think of me based on what he sees that I charge? So thank you so much. This is amazing. And Jennifer is saying thank you. And I just want to share a few things that you do get the digital versions of our decks today. You always get early bird notice of webinars and other special offers, and you know, bi-weekly tips, stories, and insights, etc. This has been recorded, so it will show up on the YouTube channel, and feel free to subscribe to that YouTube channel, because as soon as I have enough subscribers, I can call the channel Inspire Conversation, although you can find it already by searching Inspire Conversation. And I am launching my next group coaching program in September. If you want to get on the September list, please go to InspireConversation.com and join that wait list for the September group coaching. And this is actually the last webinar for the summer. So Katy has been an amazing guest. Katy, I can't thank you enough. And you put so much work into this, but really valuable for myself and everybody on the call for sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and Mary Jane, most of all, for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.